We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome again to another special edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. This week, we are checking in with an old friend in New Hampshire. He's a representative in the Granite State. His name is Tim Egan. Tim, thank you so much for joining us once again on In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. You may get a prize for maybe the most welcome guest on our show.
I think what I love most about that sentence is the word welcomed guest, because that shows the friendship you and I have had for, I want to say we're coming up on 30 years, buddy, but it's close to that.
It is 30 years. It's funny. Time doesn't stop at all. It just keeps going and accruing. But in this world of crazy cannabis that we are in, never a dull moment, and certainly never a dull moment in the state of New Hampshire, which I heard a term called a moat. A moat being you are surrounded by adult use legal states in cannabis, with Maine, Massachusetts, and Vermont moving forward with their program. Is that not an accurate way to describe what New Hampshire is in New England right now?
In the House of Representatives, where I chair the House Cannabis Caucus for the Democrats, we refer to it as the Island of Prohibition, where this little triangle in between Maine, Mass, Vermont, now, stores coming online soon, the great nation of Canada and some of their provinces. So yes, we are the Island of Prohibition, and I have made it my work for the coming year of legislative year to try and push that back, because I think it's time. We're all adults, we're all mature folks that understand the business world and the healthcare world, that cannabis can be a positive for in both facets. And I think it's time to get New Hampshire up to par with the rest of the states in New England.
So again, the question, the obvious question is, how goes the battle, Tim? Because I hear rumors that things are softening amongst your peers in the legislature.
So I think there's three things that have really changed the mindset of folks here in New Hampshire. As for a long time, House Minority Leader Andy Cushing's been a pro-cannabis leader, and he has engaged more and more of the industry and the Democrats. He's probably been a guy who understands that the social justice impact when states around us are selling cannabis and taking tax revenue for it, we're sending people, predominantly brown and black people, to jail for it. And he's always stood in the idea that that's just unfair. And I agree with him. And that's why I joined his cannabis caucus 2 years ago in my first House session. Now in my second House session, we realized that that's one of the hallmarks of trying to create diversity in this industry. We're seeing that BIPOC community grow in terms of licensure and ownership and engagement in the industry around the country. I think the second thing that's happened is more and more folks have realized that that's the smart way to move forward. But we also have to do it in understanding that this is a business in a lot of states, and that revenue generation in a state where there's no income tax, there's no sales tax. We're very proud of that. We're very happy about it. But we also have to figure out how we fund one of our biggest issues, which is our education. You just can't keep asking taxpayers who pay a property tax, landowners, homeowners, to keep funding things. So the idea that we're looking for this new revenue source could help our education funding and our mental health funding, two things that every state struggles with that isn't so easy to fund. And I think the third thing that's happened, and this has been sort of this, I'll call it unique, politics makes strange bedfellows, right? That phrase is so accurate in New Hampshire right now. And while there are many things that I do not like, and I have to go on record as I do not like the Free State program. The Free Staters want to move to New Hampshire. They want to get involved in offices. They want to cut the budgets for everything and not pay any taxes for anything. I will not be the person that wants to vote to close the firehouse. I will not want to vote to defund the police. Free Staters want to do that. And they want to close the DOT and this and that. But because they are very much civil libertarians, they want the right to do whatever they want to do without controls. One of the things that they're very much in favor of is voting in favor of cannabis, because it is a civil right, a civil liberty, maybe. They can grow it in their backyard, they can smoke it, they can cook it into brownies, whatever they want to do. But politics is making strange bedfellows, and a large aspect of the Liberty Alliance side of the Republican Party in New Hampshire is very pro-cannabis now, and the Republican Party has the majority. So the mindset that the region has been moving towards engaging an industry that is acceptable in many states and hasn't been here, that it's a business that can help support economic impact issues that we have here in the state, and now a sort of this political coming together that's been occurring. And I've been talking with a variety of members of the Republican Party. I think those are some of the winds that are shifting here in New Hampshire. And maybe the one that isn't of those three, that's sort of the big animal in the room, is we have a governor who has eyes or intentions or in discussion, and we don't know about where he wants to go politically. Now, I don't know about you, but you're a student of history. If you take a Republican governor and ask him to run against a Democratic senator, he's going to have to come to the center. I love and support Maggie Hassan, but if this makes my governor realize that he has to engage his left side of the aisle more, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, and then don't get me started about left and right and conservative and liberal and Republican and Democrat, because I happen to think that's our biggest issue in this country, is that we put labels on everyone instead of looking at that one label, which is we're all Americans, okay?
Yep.
We're from one country and one family of humanity, and that is still being learned by a lot of people. They still can't accept that. But let's go back to your governor for a second. Can we, please? How confident are you that you can create some kind of an opportunity to actually decriminalize cannabis in New Hampshire and perhaps even open an adult use legalization program that won't be state run? Because that's what they've done with liquor in that state, haven't they?
Yeah, confident, I'm about as confident as I can be about anything in the political spectrum nowadays. And the quick tangent, when I'm ready to start a third party, I'm calling you, brother, because you'll be right there with me. I'm a blue dog Democrat, Jimmy. I'm a centrist. I run two businesses. My wife runs a business, so my mindset is what is good for the people of New Hampshire? What is good for our economy? What is good for our systems that are funded off of the economy? And I think the governor understands that if he wants to be New Hampshire first, he has to listen to what the people are saying. 2019, there was a UNH survey center. The research is proving it out. 75% approval rating across the board in the state. 86% of Democrats, 83% of independents. New Hampshire, right? Very big independent mindset state, very, very purple. Yep. 62% of Republicans, all in favor of legalization of cannabis. Now, they also understand that if they're sitting here in the pyramid or the triangle of prohibition, revenue coming into Maine, Mass, soon to be Vermont, and the idea that taxpayers are leaving the state to legally buy cannabis in other states because they can, if they're above 21, they're
right.
taking their tax dollars out of our state. And not that this is a 100% guaranteed, studied by research, but I think you and I are students of culture. I'm pretty sure that folks that enjoy snowboarding and hiking and mountain biking and snowshoeing probably enjoy cannabis as much as they enjoy alcohol. So if they're going to make a tourism decision to go where those sports are, can they go to up by the lakes in Maine? Can they go to the Green Mountains, Vermont? Can they go to Western Massachusetts? Sure, because they can go there and they can buy and enjoy their cannabis legally. Will they think twice about entering New Hampshire? I hope they don't, but they could. Now that's an economic development tourism issue. So at the end of the day, it's not even about free staters' civil rights or social justice. It's about business. And if Chris Sununu is a business-minded governor that he always says he is, then this is something that he has to take a real hard look at. And maybe your question of what do I hope for or what do I think? I think it becomes less of about what will he think about, but what can he say yes to? Now, I want to cover your conversation about the liquor stores because I think that's really important. I don't think that state-run operation for anything is good. I think what happens is it gets myriad of issues and control in there that the public isn't comfortable with because there's not so much transparency. I think the way that cannabis has a success in New Hampshire is diversity of license owners, right? And I mean, not just variety of license owners, but with diversity in the people that own them, right? Diversity of community. I think limited amount of licenses that any one person can own. So there's not a sort of a conglomerate taking control. I think the idea that regionally having cannabis dispensaries around the state will help with tourism and economic development. It'll allow folks to want to try and start smaller businesses. And I think if you allow them to create sort of the supply chain, allow folks to grow, process, and sell, that's going to create small businesses. We've seen a great success and growth in the craft brewing industry here in New Hampshire. And we can mirror that with the cannabis industry. And I think those are the kind of things that are business issues that hopefully a business-minded governor will begin to pay more attention to. Hey, you're going to create new businesses, new jobs, new reasons for tourists to come here, regionalize it, out in the western part of the state or in my part of the North Country, Grafton and Coos, which is always economically more difficult because we're not near cities. Maybe that's what a governor needs to hear.
Are you, as a politician, and I know you're not a career politician because you can't make a living being a politician in New Hampshire.
Not at $100 a year.
I love that. I just love bringing that up to people because if people may start thinking, "Wow, he sounds very intelligent for a politician," and he doesn't. Got to realize that you're not doing this for your livelihood. You're doing this because you care about your fellow man in your state of New Hampshire, right? I mean, that's it.
And I'll let you ask your question in a second. I prefer citizen legislature. And just to let your viewers know, yes, we get elected to 2-year terms.
Yeah.
I represent about roughly between 3,000 and 5,000 people. There are 400 of us in the House of Representatives, but it's a citizens legislature. It's a voice of the people. We refer to the state house as the people's house. And so we are responsible to our constituents. And the reason I ran is I was driving around the neighborhood in my district, Sugar Hill, Franconia, Lisbon, and seeing empty storefronts and businesses not starting and folks worried about economics. And this was 2018. And I said, I have to get in the game. I got to do something. I'll say a successful businessman, but I'm not a terrible one. And you know some of my business partners and some of the firms I work with, not bad companies. So I said, I have something to offer here. So that's what we do as citizen legislature. So yes, thank you. I'm a reasonable citizen legislator that thinks about policy that impacts people day to day, not ideology. So
is this, I'm of the opinion that half our issues in our world of politics is because of term limits, and I'm talking about the federal government here more than anything else, and it does not reflect the will of the people anymore. And that's what bothers me the most of being a citizen of our modern day, is we hear that the percentages of our citizenry support legalization or at least decriminalization of cannabis, and yet it continues to fall on deaf ears in the halls of our capital. And it bothers me because they're supposed to be there to represent the people, not themselves, in making sure that they get reelected every year. And there's a disconnect with that, but it sounds like with how New Hampshire runs their state, perhaps this is a far better way to run a true democracy than what we have in existence in our federal government. That being said, one of the issues that you brought up, one of the things that you hope will be give you a little bit more leverage when you talk about business and you talk about the tourism world in New Hampshire, and you do attract a lot of tourism in your state of New Hampshire.
Second largest industry in the state.
I still maintain that it is cannabis tourism that is the sleeping giant in this industry. And it's slowly starting to evolve in the states of Maine and in Massachusetts and in Arizona and in other places around the United States and in Canada, where they're taking in, they're allowing you or they're creating areas that are pro-cannabis on properties for people to go and enjoy them. And because the plant is such a socialization activity, if you will, it plays perfectly to the cannabis tourism in a tourist in the world. And I'd like to see more people embrace that and see that as people look for places to go and invest their money and time. And it sure makes sense to me that a friendly bed and breakfast or bud and breakfast in New Hampshire would attract quite a crowd. It fits, doesn't it?
It 100% fits, and that's what I meant before about the western part of the state, or Grafton, Coos, Carroll, Sullivan County, northern part of the state, where that's what people go there for the quality. What they say, one of the leading indicators of why people move to New Hampshire is the quality of life, and why people want to visit there is because of the environment. So yeah, if you can go out and have your free space and your open space, then you can enjoy things that won't offend other people, as opposed to doing it in a suburban neighborhood. I think one of the things that I want to follow up on that you said ties to something that's really important about the concept. When you say you go to Ireland, everybody always says, oh, I'm going to go on the Guinness Brewery tour, right? Or when you go to, down to Boston, you're going to go to the Sam Adams Brewery tour. Mm-hmm. Why don't we have a cannabis tour, an opportunity to see how it's grown, how it's made, how it's processed, and you watch it go through the assembly line, and at the end you go, I want to buy that, and that, and oh, I can go sit in the lounge, and you're going to let me charge my EV car for 2 hours, enjoy my cannabis, maybe even stay over if I want to. Oh, by the way, you offer food. I may be hungry and want a meal while I'm there. And now you've created a long opportunity of economic development in a region where a cannabis tourism mindset can flourish.
So what's the biggest pushback that you still face when you deal with those that are either prohibitionists or NIMBYs, not in my backyard in New Hampshire? What's the biggest? Is it the gateway drug? Is it, or what about our kids? I mean, what is the biggest pushback that you get when you're a pro-cannabis legislator in New Hampshire?
Yeah, and one that's not major, but I want to cover right off the top is the sort of the gateway. Therapeutic cannabis and medicinal cannabis is legal in New Hampshire. We're over that. You talk to any veteran that suffers through traumas of war, and they'll tell you that cannabis is the #1 cure for their issues.
It sure beats opioids.
And a state having a huge opioid problem, and maybe that's a little bit of that bird on the shoulder that was there for Governor Hassan and for Governor Sununu is this idea of we were really hit hard here in New Hampshire to opioids. And I respect the idea that we have to mind that. But I think therapeutic wise, especially some research that I read out of Partners Healthcare out of Boston, was the idea that it's an alternative in pain relief to opioids. Right. So, can we sort of kill two birds with one stone? So that I want to get out of the way. I think the big pushback I get is I'll say it's sort of an offshoot of the NIMBY. And my bill that I filed, which is Bill 2608, relative to legalization of a certain amount of cannabis is the title of it, coming up to committee in this 22 House session, deals with this one, which is you have to grow it indoors out of sight. You can't, I've heard from legislators, well, we don't want to see it grown on the porch where someone might want to, run onto your property and steal it, or an animal or a little kid might accidentally grab it. I respect that. So it's got to be grown indoors and out of the way, out of sight. Maybe if you grow it in your yard, it's got to be in your fenced-in backyard. I know Massachusetts is famous for having a law where pools have to be fenced in for safety issues. Right. So maybe it's not pushing that hard, but the idea is that it is not visible. So what it does is it doesn't entice people to commit a crime to grab it. So that's the NIMBY one. The other one is when people talk about like, oh, well, maybe little Timmy didn't pass math as a sophomore or junior in high school because he was outside behind the gym smoking weed. What we need to do for our young people is understand that legalization of cannabis allows it to be tested, inspected, regulated. When you go to the liquor store now, you can decide to buy a 70 proof vodka or 110 proof vodka, a 70 proof bourbon, 130 proof bourbon. You can buy 4.5 beer. You can buy 0.1 beer. You can buy, a non-alcoholic beer. You can buy 8 point whatever beer. And, if you want a thick, dark ale, it's going to be stronger. Because it's regulated, tested, it then can be managed. Right now, we don't allow folks that might be first-time cannabis users, young adults, to have that opportunity. So therefore, they're trying anything. And a kid might try something and it's a little too strong for him. And if he had been able to purchase it or she be able to purchase it legally, they'll say, great, you know what? I want to zone out on the couch and watch a movie. I want something that gets my brain going. And while I'm out, I get to enjoy, the outdoors. It enhances me. Just like a glass, right? They talk about a glass of wine a day is good for you. Or, a beer is not bad. A beer a day is not bad for you. Right. Well, there are some positives of it. And the other part of it is it doesn't have to be lit and burnt and inhaled. You can make cookies, you can make brownies, you can make gummies. Edibles are a way that the carcinogens don't come into your body. So when people say to me, oh, well, it's going to cause, cancer, actually, no, because if you create edibles. So I think the idea of letting folks know that if you really want to protect your kids from it, controlling it and regulating it and understanding the potency of it is really the way to do that.
Right. It's about, to me, it's always and always will be about education, and not just educating the people that make the laws, but educating the parents of the children on how best to talk to them about these adult products that do exist and that they will try, because that is the job of the teenager, the adolescent, is to push the limits that the parents put on them, if they even have limits and parameters and boundaries on them. Parenting is still the toughest job any of us ever sign up for, but we still have to deal with it at all points of our lives. And the more education parents have about this, and it is one of the things, Tim, that I'm hoping to develop moving forward here, is to make myself available to talk to parent teacher groups or just to parent community leaders about how to talk to your children about that sex, drugs, and rock and roll talk now that has to include cannabis more than it ever has before, because it is now available to 44% of the adult population in the United States on a legal basis. And just because you're an adult does not mean you know how to use it or even where to find that information about the plant, because it changes so much. And another thing I want to make sure that my friends in every legislature do, get bills for research to study the cannabis that is grown in that state that is available to be consumed legally in that state. The fact that they still have to jump through hoops just to learn and just to get research grants on how to study it. Ask the substance abuse community that has studied this plant for years and still can't figure out that 4%, let's say there's just 4% of that issue out there that they find. But for the most part, they know that it's a relatively benign plant, but can still be abused if it's overused. And it's one of the reasons why I preach education and responsible use. So whatever you can do to make that happen in your state, I support 100%. How do people find out about what your crusade is and get behind you in the state of New Hampshire? And how do they contact you and get others to support this movement?
Do I have a time to respond to one or two of the things that you said about parents and the federal government?
You have all the time in the world, because it means I don't have to talk.
So parenting is, you and I are parents.
Yes, sir.
Right? Parenting is a job. It's a lifelong job. And
Yes.
I think we are always going to talk to your kids about looking both ways crossing the street, wearing a bike helmet, wearing your seatbelt when you drive a car, not having too many people in the car that are going to distract you. We've created, we've created laws to manage the cell phone, and that helps young people drive safer. And there are a variety of things that you do as a parent, right? You teach kids levels of respect and
Right.
how to act in interviews and how to act at family gatherings. And so
Right.
this is just another factor when you talked about the idea of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You know, we've had a history of don't listen to that loud music, Johnny. Now loud music is like cool, right? Don't do this. You know, times change, culture changes. America has changed, and America has begun to realize that the 85 plus, I'm probably doing my math wrong, prohibition from when we started to realize that, you know, hemp was a value is now no longer a value. That prohibition time has come to end. It has to, because consumers understand that the pharmaceuticals or the alcohol or the tobacco that they enjoy, you know, if they need something pharmaceutical to help them live their lives, these are all things that they can legally get now. I don't see how cannabis is any different. So from a parent's point of view, you just have to be, like you said, communication with your children, communication at any age, whether they're 15 or 25 or 40, about how to live their lives and give them the best advice you can. I think where you're talking about really where that education comes in is the federal government has a responsibility to deschedule cannabis. I think the idea that you can't do research on how it might help you medically, you can't do research on how it might impact younger adults versus older adults. You can't do research on operating under the influence, because the federal government does not allow you to spend that money on that research, because it's a Schedule I drug.
Right.
So if they deschedule it, then you can begin to have all this research that might help people better understand the value of it. And I think another part of the federal government that has to look at this is, you know, we're deciding right now whether to spend another $1 trillion to $3 trillion on economic impact that'll help our country overcome what COVID did in slowing businesses down.
Right.
Well, wouldn't a new industry like a cell phone, or, you know, the repeat of the craft brewery industry across the entire country, generate more revenue? I'm pretty sure cannabis businesses pay federal taxes and pay employee payroll tax, and those business owners and people that work there pay personal income taxes. It's almost like we're ignoring a cash revenue opportunity nationally. So I think the federal government has to begin to look at what they can do to relax some of these banking laws, relax, you know, some of these overarching laws that make cannabis be put on the same plane unfairly as cocaine, as heroin, as fentanyl, and deschedule it. And therefore, I think you'll see that economic development grow. And within that decision, that they actually fund education programs, like we do with alcohol. Hey, if you have this much, you might have this problem. If you have a little, it might help you here. So we do that now, right? At the end of every commercial, it's ask your doctor about this pharmaceutical. Why can't we apply that same logic to cannabis and say, if you think this is good for you, you know, ask your doctor, and then you can go enjoy it without worrying. Or right now we're putting on the alcohol and tobacco products, we're putting little disclaimers. You can put that, and so states are doing that now where cannabis is legal. Federally, we can educate our populace to engage this product safely, enjoyably, and create some revenue. So where can you help me? In a variety of places. There's 2 or 3. New Hampshire CAN is an organization. It's a pro-business trade association for the cannabis industry. They have NHCAN.org. They have information about everything that I'm doing. They're very supportive of the House Cannabis Caucus on the Democratic side. They've actually brought us together with some Republicans. You did us a pleasure and enjoy, and had a program where my colleague Ross Berry from the Republican side of the aisle and Daryl Eames from New Hampshire CAN came on and talked about, you know, how we're getting there, and we've gotten a lot farther. I think the other thing is asking folks who are your viewers to contact their legislator. Go to the New Hampshire General Court and find out who's my legislator, and it'll show up based on your town, and send that person an email and say, please take a look at Representative Egan's bill on cannabis. It's worth the time. And I think the last one is as well, the chair of criminal justice, Darrell Abbas, has also filed a bill that actually includes some commercialization of it. He does think the alley is through the state liquor stores, which I disagree with. I think it hurts economic development for small business owners. But reach out to him and say, I like your bill, but can you dial it back a little bit? The only way that legislators make policy is by listening to their constituents. So I ask folks to go to the New Hampshire General Court and look up their legislator and contact them. Or if they want more information about what we're doing in the state, they can contact me, or they can contact NHCAN. They've been very supportive. They've been setting up legislative briefings. We've had 2 in the last 2 months. We have another one coming up this month and another one in December. And it's a combination of legislators from both sides of the aisle and industry coming together and then taking questions from the audience. So that's sort of what I've been working on to spread the word. I think, to use your analogy, we're trying to educate the community that the time has come for cannabis to be legalized and to be commercialized in New Hampshire and end that triangle of prohibition that is harming us economically and socially.
There you go. Well, Tim Egan, I think the state and your constituents in your neck of the woods up there in New Hampshire way are in good shape. I wish you the best of luck. You have a friend. Whenever you need an audience, all you got to do is pick up the phone, call me. You'll always have access to my audience because we go back so far. So I appreciate you taking the time as well.
Well, Jimmy, you're one, you're a friend. 2, you're a smart guy. 3, you understand this social issue. And I think all of those makes me want to communicate with you a lot, because not only do you sort of think like I do, but I think politically you think like, wait a second, let's try and put the divide aside and come together on some issues that move us forward as a nation. Because it's not always black and white or red and blue. It is gray, it is purple, and we do have to find a center. And you, like me, have been part of many production meetings in the TV industry, and you build a consensus on how to get to a project. No one just says, this is how we're going to do it. You sit around a table and you go, what do we want to accomplish? And everybody goes, all right, there you go. That's the idea. And you get to the center and everybody can move forward going, I believe in what is in the center. So that's what I think we're going to do. I would love to be able to have you be part of it more. I may ask you to come up to the state of New Hampshire, maybe educate some of our legislators, because you do have a wealth of knowledge. You've been talking to so many people through Pro Cannabis Media in the last 2 years. I'm amazed at what you've created and what you've accomplished. And I thank you for your serious attention to what I'm trying to accomplish.
Well, thank you, Tim Egan. Keep up the good work, as they say. Please keep in touch. And remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to In the Weeds with Jimmy Young and all of our Pro Cannabis Media content. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.
PCM TV is supported by Salient Systems, a world leader in video management security, and by Revolutionary Clinics, a medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are 2 productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual, not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. and we keep the cost low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.